Welcome back to Zangeki no Reginleiv, and before I go into Frey's next mission, I'm just swapping his bow out for Thor's bow, because I don't like the other one, how it fires the 3 vertical arrows that are comparatively pretty weak, even if it does have a much better firing rate. But, yeah, the name of this mission is not so encouraging. If you need a little bit of catch-up, which, given my tendency to not update this series for a while, I can completely understand. Freya broke off and went south, and Frey is still leading this group of humans across a bridge over the Rhine River trying to get away from the giants. This group includes Sigmund and everybody else. All the other human characters that we've met so far, aside from the ones Freya met, because they're several miles away. And so we have to cross this bridge over the Rhine River. But it's never that simple. Although, actually, now that I think, I don't know why all those people were jumping for no reason, but here we have the same giants and the same giant elephant that was tailing us before. And I'm using Thor's bow here because they start a fair distance away, which means that I have more than enough time to at least get off 1 or 2 shots, assuming I can line things up in the middle of the screen and pull the Wii Remote far enough back to get this to work, which sometimes I can't. And ideally I would be going for headshots, but sometimes I just can't get it up that far, so the next best thing is to aim for the weapon, because number 1, you'll disarm them and force them to have a shorter reach for all their combat moves, and 2, you get earth crystals that way. This is actually a pretty risky move I was trying. I was trying to split the gap between the 2 giants and attack them from behind, partly because I was going for these extra crystals. If you're short on water crystals, this is a great opportunity to just slice off their arms or their legs over and over and get them that way. And I can't remember if I showed this before, but this is the greatsword that has the different attack series. It has 2 weak attacks followed by a strong attack, and then you can go into 1 more weak attack followed by another strong attack before you have to rest before you can attack again. Now the elephant does move in pretty quickly, but it stops at the bridge. In fact, if you're looking at the radar, all the humans have already taken off toward the bridge. They don't actually get on the bridge until you finish this particular sequence, but they will kind of split off, and the ones that are willing to fight or can fight will start to move forward and engage the giants. And the ramp leading up onto the bridge is a good opportunity to use a weapon like Thor's bow, where you almost need the higher vantage point to properly aim at the larger giants, at least if you're going for headshots. And it also gives you plenty of time because they'll start engaging all the attacking humans around them, or in my case, humans and berserkers. For this segment, you don't have to kill the big-ass elephant. We haven't had to do that at all yet. We haven't even fought it. We've just kind of avoided it the entire time. In fact, if you've been observing the radar carefully, this time and several past times, it doesn't even show up as a red dot on the radar. It's not acknowledged as, oh jeez, nice headshot. It doesn't get acknowledged as an enemy so much as just a natural obstacle. And this is something that can happen. If the giants start following the humans around, sometimes they'll get kind of pinned against the side of the bridge, which I'm not going to complain about because it ends up working out for me. And with this weapon in particular, it's a little easier because of the extended combo to lop off the legs of the giants, which does 2 things. Number 1, it immobilizes them. And number 2, it gets their head really close to the ground. So if you're worried about getting frost crystals or just really want to go for headshots, that means you can do it with close range weapons instead of having to use ranged stuff the entire time. I think right now I'm actually short on water crystals, but frost crystals are nice to have regardless. Now if you've been paying attention to the radar, the humans are already gone. They've gone up the bridge, and in fact, Off in the distance you can see, I believe it's Naglfar. The giant ship is floating alongside the bridge and is firing lasers at it, presumably trying to destroy it before the humans can get all the way across. Based on my experience, I have never actually seen the bridge get destroyed. I think that's more just there to try and heighten the drama of the situation a little bit. Now this is a really, really long bridge. You can in fact just run all the way to the end of it if you really want to. But you probably shouldn't. Fortunately, the elephant is too big to get on the bridge or just doesn't feel like getting on the bridge. But the exit flag doesn't trigger until you get all the people to the end of the bridge. So, you kind of have to stick with them for this part. Given the length of the bridge, the first time I played this I was expecting things to spawn much faster. But if you're really efficient about killing things relatively quickly, you can get through most of this bridge. I'd say maybe half of it you'd spend fighting, and then half of it you're just spending watching the humans slowly make their way across. If you're trying to anticipate when certain things spawn, there are generally 2 points when it happens. One is when you cross between these big spires that are dotted along the bridge, or when you get to about the midway point between spires. Now, things haven't spawned yet, but they should appear relatively soon. They're giants, so they are a little slow, but they should be showing up soon. My tip-off for when the giants first appear as you're going across the bridge, it's not just red showing up on the radar, but usually one of the berserkers will howl when things start showing up. So I'm just waiting to hear that. There it is. Alright, so you're going to have a magician or two to deal with in this mission. So that's why I have Thor's bow. So that I can, hopefully get off some shots on this. Some of these will spawn the limbed worms, some of them will spawn giants. Usually one shot isn't enough to take them down, you'll usually need at least two, but you're basically cutting the health in half with one body shot to these things. And then if you aim it just right, you can, in fact you can kind of tell it's actually regenerating things that got blown off from that first shot. Fortunately I'm a little too close to it now, so trying to get off another Thor's bow shot on it's going to be very difficult. Particularly because it's spawning all of these lindworms, so I gotta make some space and then get the angle just right so it'll be crossing kind of through the middle of the screen. And it looks like it's not gonna happen here. Yeah, ideally I would have gotten off another shot earlier to help prevent some of these lindworms swarming around me. Usually the humans can deal with them pretty well on their own, but oh man, I am right on that border and it's just not giving me the opportunity to shoot it. Let's make absolutely sure it's going to let me get this shot off. You can do it. You can do it. There we go. And that killed it. By the way, you can probably tell already, but the frame rate is going to be awful on this stage. Because not only do you have all these giants moving around, even though it's a relatively simple environment, you still have that big-ass ship flying around, firing dozens of lasers down at the bridge. So sometimes it will just overload on visual effects and not know what to do with itself. See, here it's actually running pretty smooth, because I just have the two giants on screen, but turn around and the frame rate drops. Should mention too, you're going to see probably a few collision oddities with this map. It has to do with all the pillars and rubble laying on the bridge. Sometimes it'll seem like giants are floating, but really they're just kind of balanced on top of one of the rocks. I had, during my practice run of this, a wind crystal that dropped from one of the lindworms, and it was just floating I'd say maybe 8 feet above the ground, directly above one of the pillars that was down on the bridge. Actually, I was thinking of headshotting this guy, but I wasn't expecting him to turn around that fast because the humans have already taken off down the bridge again. So, whatever. Just blast him in the torso. See, this is what I was expecting, was that he would be preoccupied with the other humans, and I would be able to shoot him from behind. Sadly, that's not the case. However, this is the kind of level where you can afford to be a little bit greedy. What I mean by that is, you saw that I had the long shot on the magician with the bow earlier. When I did that, it got a couple limbs, which means he dropped crystals back near the beginning of the bridge. Fortunately, the spacing between the enemy instances on this bridge is such that you can run back to the beginning of the bridge, grab any crystals you missed, and then keep moving forward with the humans. But of course, that means that you're kind of risking being caught out of position for when the next sequence starts. And to give you an idea of how long the intervals are between each wave of giants spawning, I'm fast forwarding the video now, because there is a solid minute that it takes from that point to when the giants start appearing again. You know, when you hear this mission is just crossing a bridge, you don't expect it to take very long. But, au contraire, Zangeki no Reginleiv says, no. Thank you, Berserkers. Now, there's no magician for this wave, thankfully. And they start off far enough away that you can take pot shots at them with pretty much any long-range weapon that you want, even if it does have a really long charge-up time. However, you don't have time to just sit back and do this the entire wave, because the smaller giants, I mean, they're not that fast, but they do move in fast enough that you can't just do this the entire time. I mean, even if you try stalling by jumping backward a little bit, they're still going to catch up to you eventually. And this is actually a good opportunity to show off the Greatsword's combo. Here's the strong attack. You can follow it immediately with a weak attack and then another strong attack. And the range on this thing is just great. Then again, it's a great sword, so you might expect that. You can actually see all the different flavors of giant in this wave, because there's a slightly larger giant, and then the second largest giant, and then the largest giant. If you want to, what you can do is aim for the one that's in front of the others, because this is a narrow passage for them, and try and wound one of them or otherwise get them to stop moving and create sort of a traffic jam to buy yourself a little time. Or you could do this, because this bow is really strong and is prone to killing giants outright with a couple shots. Now, if you've been watching the radar, the humans have started moving a little farther back. But what tends to happen on this stage is either one human gets really far ahead of the entire group, or one human will get hung up on an environment piece, or it'll be a combat unit that just doesn't disengage and go with the rest of the group, and it ends up tailing behind. It does eventually start running to catch up, but it always seems to happen on this stage. And personally, I am just going to make sure that I have the water crystals I need to be able to forge a couple of things after this map is over. Because I remember from the last video, that was one thing that I was pretty low on. And I don't really have a good reason to be low on it, aside from just blowing it on a bunch of weapons. Because these things are so plentiful because of it just being so easy to get them. Oh yeah, did I mention? If these things don't have legs, they will walk around on their hands. Unless you, of course, cut one of them off, and it just forces them to fall down again. And I think that, yeah, I saw a frost crystal that counted as a decap. Yeah, the humans are way far down the bridge now. And do you remember what I said about being greedy? I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward through this. A lot of missions, you really can't get away with wasting your time doing stuff like this. But this is one of those missions where it's really easy to get away with it. So if you need to grind a particular kind of crystal like water, frost, wind, earth, then this is actually a decent mission to do that. Well, for this point in the game, it's a decent point to do that. And I might as well demonstrate something, which I think I mentioned earlier, but just to give you a more visual representation of it, you can try shooting at the ship, but it will not do anything. Oh, that one kind of drifted off camera. Let's see if I can get one a little more in our line of sight. Yeah, see, it doesn't even hit it, it just passes through it. Because, well, you're not supposed to attack it, so they just didn't put collision detection on the boat at all. And the point where the ramp meets the ground is sort of a finish line for this stage. Yeah, you can only go like a certain distance off of the bridge before you meet the invisible wall. You don't really have much control over how fast the humans move to this point. I mean, they're going to move here regardless, but sometimes they dawdle around on the bridge, sometimes they're just full sprinting the entire time. But let's see, Sigmund's first, random ass villagers followed by Regine, and they pack toward the end. Helgi bringing up the rear. And what I'm hoping is I got more than enough water crystals from that I don't have to worry about forging anything after this. Yeah, that's going to be plenty. I think we're good on those for now. Watch me spend all of them. Okay, for real. Forging, let's see, I can do this. This is the Gale sword. Gale as in really strong wind gales. And that opens up a couple more options, but I'm not feeling that one right now. We'll go to these in a future video. I want to make sure that I get this one that's kind of stuck in the middle of all these other completed ones. This is, I just call it the Sure Shot bow. It's the second level homing bow for Freya. It does 5 more points of damage for each homing shot. It has an extra homing shot, and it allows you to lock onto one additional target. For Frey, though, I'm going to equip the Gale Sword, and if you look at this combo, it's really long, but every attack in it is a weak attack. So that's kind of the trade-off that you get. You can just keep swinging the sword over and over, but you will never do a strong attack. Which can actually be an okay thing, because sometimes if you time your strong attack wrong, you'll end up getting hit while recovering from that. As for Freya, I might as well just give her loadout for the next mission. But keeping the spear, keeping the current sword that she has, and I am switching over to the second level homing bow. Its mana consumption is the same, its range is the same. The main difference between that and level 1 is just slightly more damage and an extra arrow, and one additional target. And we're decent enough length into the game that I'm going to shell out crystals to up their health a bit. So I'm going to up Freya's health by about 30 points. Freya's health goes up 20 points for each one of these, so he has kind of the unfair advantage in this regard. He doesn't get to use magic very much, but he does have the advantage for just taking hits. And next time on Zangeki no Reginleiv, we'll find out what else happened with Freya in that kingdom to the south.